I'm Sarah, and at 34 years old, I never imagined I'd receive the call that changed everything. It had been 8 months since my mother last reached out, not to ask about my life, not to check on the grandchildren she'd never bothered to visit. No, she called because she needed something. $3 million in 2 weeks, to be exact. She wanted me to liquidate my husband's property to rescue the family from financial ruin. The same family that had excluded me from holiday gatherings because they deemed my husband unworthy of their social circle. The same mother who had poisoned my sister's children against me, telling them Aunt Sarah had married down. The same sister whose arrogant husband had once insulted James to his face, calling him nothing more than a glorified laborer. Now, suddenly, they needed us. Before I reveal what unfolded at my mother's 60th birthday celebration, the truths that surfaced and the decision I ultimately made, let me take you back to where this story truly begins. 7 years ago, I was the daughter my mother proudly showcased at every social gathering. I had graduated from an Ivy League university and worked as a junior analyst at an exclusive investment firm in Manhattan, the kind of position that made Patricia Whitmore's eyes light up whenever she mentioned it to her circle. My Sarah, she'd say, swirling her wine with practiced elegance, is destined to conquer the financial world. I believed her narrative. I believed that trajectory defined my future. Corner office, designer wardrobe, a husband with the right pedigree and portfolio. Then I met James at a farmer's market upstate. I'd driven there seeking respite from the burnout that was slowly consuming me. I craved air that didn't taste of exhaust fumes and relentless ambition. He stood behind a weathered wooden table, displaying organic produce and fresh herbs, wearing a faded flannel shirt and boots covered in dried mud. He wasn't conventionally handsome in the polished way I'd grown accustomed to, but when he spoke about soil health and crop cycles, his eyes radiated a passion I'd never witnessed in any boardroom. I returned the following weekend, and the weekend after that. When I finally brought him home to meet my family, my mother assessed his work-worn hands and asked the question that would define the next 7 years of our lives together. "So, James," she said, her smile as fragile as tissue paper, "what's your actual profession?" He didn't flinch or apologize. He simply smiled and replied, "This is my actual profession, ma'am. I grow food that nourishes people." The silence that followed felt suffocating. My sister Amanda leaned toward her husband Trevor and whispered something that made them both laugh. I pretended not to notice, but I noticed everything. That was merely the beginning. Our engagement celebration was supposed to be joyful. My mother insisted on hosting it at her estate, a sprawling colonial property in Connecticut that she'd spent decades perfecting to impress people she barely tolerated. 20 guests, champagne, elaborate appetizers. James wore his best shirt. I could tell he'd ironed it himself because the collar sat slightly uneven, and I loved him more for that detail. Trevor and Amanda arrived 40 minutes late in a brand-new sports car. Trevor ensured everyone noticed. When someone complimented the vehicle, Trevor announced loudly enough for the entire room to hear, "Just a little reward for making partner at the firm last month." When he shook James's hand, his gaze dropped to my fiancé's shoes, clean but worn, practical. "Nice boots," Trevor said with a smirk. "Do they come standard with farm equipment?" A few people laughed. James simply smiled. "They actually do. It's a package deal." Then came my mother's toast. She stood at the head of the room, champagne flute raised, and I made the mistake of hoping she might surprise me. To Sarah and James, she began, "My youngest has always been independent, headstrong." She paused deliberately. "I just hope in a few years she won't regret abandoning everything she worked for this." She gestured vaguely at James, at us, at the life she couldn't comprehend. I glanced at my father. Richard Whitmore sat in the corner nursing his whiskey, saying nothing as always. But my grandmother, Grandma Ruth, reached over and squeezed my hand beneath the table. "I like him," she whispered. "He's genuine." That night, lying in bed, I made my decision. I would leave New York. I would build a life with James, and I would stop waiting for my family to understand what I already knew. I just didn't realize it would take 7 years for them to come back begging. Vermont embraced us like coming home. We purchased 200 acres of rolling farmland an hour outside Burlington. The house needed work, drafty windows, an outdated kitchen, a porch that creaked with every step, but it belonged to us. James devoted himself completely to the work. From sunrise to well past sunset, he built raised beds, installed irrigation systems, negotiated with suppliers. I learned alongside him how to read soil composition, optimal planting times, what weather patterns meant for our crops. Within 3 years, our organic produce was selling at 6 farmers' markets throughout the region. Within 5 years, we'd secured contracts with 3 upscale restaurants in Burlington. Then came Emma, our daughter, arriving on a snowy February morning, screaming her opinions from her first breath. 2 years later came Daniel, quieter, more observant, with James's steady gaze. I had never experienced such profound happiness. But there was something I kept private, something James asked me not to share. His work hadn't stopped at farming. During our first winter, while I assumed he was simply reading agricultural journals by the fireplace, he was actually finalizing patents, conducting calculations, taking calls with investors from a previous life, a life before the flannel shirts and muddy boots, a life at MIT. James held a doctorate in agricultural engineering. His thesis on precision farming technology had attracted venture capitalists years before, but he'd walked away from academia, from startup offers, from all of it. Until he didn't. He built his company quietly. No flashy announcements, no press releases, just steady growth, genuine solutions, and clients who valued results over hype. They don't deserve to know, he told me once, referring to my family. And I don't need their validation. I never argued, but I always wondered what would happen when they discovered the truth. The call came at 11 at night on a Tuesday. I was half asleep, one hand resting on Daniel's back as he finally drifted off after a nightmare. My phone buzzed on the nights, and I saw my sister's name, a name that hadn't appeared on my screen in 8 months. Amanda was crying, not the delicate performative tears I remembered from childhood when she wanted something from our father. These were raw sobs, desperate and ragged. "Sarah, I need your help." Her voice fractured. "We're in serious trouble." I stepped into the hallway, closing Daniel's door softly. What kind of trouble? Trevor made catastrophic investments. He lost everything. The house, the cars, our savings. It's all gone. I leaned against the wall, processing. How much are we talking about? $3 million. We need $3 million in 2 weeks or Mom loses her house too. She put up the Connecticut property as collateral for Trevor's trades. My stomach dropped. She did what? She believed in him. Amanda's voice turned defensive before crumbling again. "We all did, and now you want me to what exactly? Sell your land. It's just acreage, Sarah. You have hundreds of acres. Just sell a portion of it. Help us." I heard James's footsteps behind me. He'd woken up, watching from our bedroom doorway with quiet concern. "I need time to think about this," I said. "Time? We don't have time." Amanda's desperation curdled into something uglier. "You owe us. We're family. Family." I repeated. The word felt strange on my tongue. "I'll call you tomorrow." I hung up before she could respond, but as I stood there in the dark hallway, her words echoed in my mind. Specifically, one fragment that made no sense. Trevor had said something about James's company being supposed to fail. What did that mean? I couldn't sleep that night. After James returned to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, the blue screen harsh against the darkness. I typed Trevor's name into the search engine along with hedge fund and investment. The results loaded slowly. Then I found it. An article from 6 months prior described Trevor's departure from his firm as mutual, the corporate euphemism for being forced out. The details were sparse, but the implications were clear. Something had gone catastrophically wrong. I kept searching. A financial forum mentioned his name in a thread about aggressive betting strategies. Someone had posted, "Anyone else see Mitchell's position against that agriculture tech startup?" Guy went all in. Absolute madness. Agriculture tech? My hands went cold. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Lisa Chen, an old colleague from my Wall Street days who now worked in compliance. She answered on the third ring, her voice groggy. "Sarah, it's midnight." "I know. I'm sorry. I need information. This better be important." "Trevor Mitchell, do you know him?" A pause, then a dry laugh. "Everyone knows Trevor Mitchell, or knew him. That guy's a cautionary tale now. What happened?" Massive short position. He bet against some sustainable farming technology company. Wagered his entire net worth that they'd collapse, and the stock surged 340%. He got completely wiped out. Lisa yawned. "Whoever runs that company must be celebrating. Trevor bet everything on them failing. Pretty poetic, really. Poetic." I repeated quietly, "Thanks, Lisa. I owe you. You owe me brunch. Call me next time you're in the city." I hung up and walked slowly back to the bedroom. James was awake, watching me. "You discovered the truth," he said. It wasn't a question. I sat on the edge of our bed, the phone still warm in my hand. "How long have you known?" James rubbed his eyes and sat up against the headboard. In the moonlight filtering through our curtains, he looked exhausted, not guilty, just exhausted. "About 8 months. 8 months. I let that sink in, and you didn't tell me. I didn't want to hurt you. He reached for my hand, and I let him take it." The quarterly shareholder reports showed unusual short activity. I had our CFO investigate. Trevor's name surfaced. "He bet against your company." "Our company," James corrected softly. "And yes, he did." I thought about all those years of contemptuous remarks. The way Trevor looked at James like he was something unpleasant stuck to an expensive shoe. That glorified laborer comment that still made my jaw clench. "He wanted you to fail. He needed me to fail." James's voice remained calm, but I heard the steel underneath. "He resented that you chose me over whatever he thought you should have chosen. Someone like him, I suppose. It wasn't enough to look down on you. He wanted to profit from your destruction. And you just let it happen." What was I supposed to do, Sarah? Call him up and gloat? Warn him he was about to lose everything? James shook his head. "The best response to people like Trevor is to keep building. Let them destroy themselves." I thought about Amanda's desperate call, about my mother's house on the line. "They're asking us to sell our land to cover his losses. I know. Losses he incurred betting against you. I know. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. 'We need to talk. Come to my birthday party. It's important.' I showed it to James. He read it, then looked at me. 'Do you want to go?' I did, but not for the reasons my mother expected. The next morning, while James fed the kids breakfast, I found myself searching again. This time I typed his company name, TerraWise Technologies. The Forbes article appeared on the first page, dated 3 months ago. The MIT PhD who left academia to revolutionize sustainable farming. I clicked through. There was James, not in flannel this time, but in a simple navy sweater, standing in front of a greenhouse filled with sophisticated sensor equipment. The photo credit listed a San Francisco studio. He'd flown across the country for this and never mentioned it. The article detailed his journey. MIT doctorate at 26. Offers from major technology companies he declined. Years of quiet development in precision agriculture technology. Then this paragraph, TerraWise Technologies, now valued at approximately $47 million, has disrupted traditional farming metrics by combining AI-driven soil analysis with sustainable practices. Founder James Chen remains notably private, preferring to let the company's results speak for themselves. $47 million, my husband, the man my mother thought couldn't provide adequately, had built something worth $47 million while wearing muddy boots, while driving the same truck he'd owned when we met, while raising our children and loving our land, and never once needing to prove anything to anyone. I saved the article to my phone, not to boast, not to throw in anyone's face, but because I sensed I might need the truth to have a face when the time came. "You found it," James said from the doorway. Emma clung to his leg, sticky with maple syrup. I looked up. "Why didn't you ever tell them?" He shrugged, lifting Emma onto his hip. "Because it wouldn't have changed anything. They'd just find new reasons to look down on us." He was probably right. But I wasn't certain anymore. Lisa called back that afternoon. "I found something else. You're not going to like it. Tell me anyway." She forwarded an email, a screenshot from an internal trading group chat that had leaked during Trevor's termination proceedings. The message was time-stamped 8 months ago. I read it 3 times. "My brother-in-law's little farm project is about to collapse. Got reliable intel from an inside source. Their technology doesn't scale. I'm going all in on the short. Going to make a fortune off his failure. The look on Sarah's face when they go bankrupt will be worth more than the money." The look on Sarah's face. He hadn't just wanted James to fail. He'd wanted to watch me suffer. He'd wanted to prove definitively that I'd made the wrong choice. And he'd used my mother's retirement savings to do it. I saved the email to a secure folder. Then I called my mother. She answered on the first ring. "Sarah, finally. You're coming to the party." "Yes, good." Her voice softened, but only strategically. "We have much to discuss. The paperwork is prepared. All you need to do is sign." "What paperwork?" "For the land sale. Trevor's handled all the details. It's very straightforward." I almost laughed. "Trevor's handled everything. Of course he had. I'll be there Saturday." I said. "James too." A pause. "Is that necessary?" "Yes, Mom, it is." She sighed. The disappointed exhale I'd heard 1,000 times. "Fine, but please, Sarah, don't make this difficult. We're family." I hung up without responding. Saturday, my mother's 60th birthday party, 40 guests, a contract I was expected to sign in front of everyone. They intended to use social pressure to corner me. They had no idea what was coming. The restaurant was exactly what my mother would choose. Crystal chandeliers, white linen tablecloths, a jazz quartet playing soft standards in the corner. The kind of establishment where people came to be seen being wealthy. James and I arrived at 7 sharp. He wore a simple button, down, no tie. I'd chosen a green dress not expensive, but well fitted. We looked like what we were, people who had nothing to prove. Patricia met us at the entrance. "You came." Her smile was tight, her eyes calculating. She kissed my cheeks without making actual contact. "Both of you, happy birthday, Mom." "Yes, well." She glanced at James, then away. "Come. Everyone's waiting." Everyone meant about 40 guests spread across a private dining room. I recognized some of my mother's society friends, women who'd spent decades judging each other's husbands and handbags, a few of Trevor's former colleagues looking uncomfortable, distant cousins I hadn't seen in years, and at a corner table, Grandma Ruth. She caught my eye and raised her hand in a small wave, but her expression wasn't celebratory. It was worried. Amanda was already seated near the head of the table, her face blotchy from crying that she'd tried to cover with concealer. Trevor sat beside her, jaw clenched, staring at his phone like it owed him money. "Sarah." Amanda stood, her voice falsely bright. "So glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it." My father appeared from somewhere, a whiskey already in his hand. "Sarah, James." He shook James's hand, the first time he'd ever done so voluntarily. "Good to see you both." Something felt off. The room had a strange energy, like everyone was holding their breath. I looked at James. He felt it too. "Let's find our seats," I said. Whatever was coming, I wanted to face it sitting down. The main course had just been cleared when my mother stood up. If I could have everyone's attention. The room quieted. Crystal clinked against glass as she tapped her champagne flute. Thank you all for coming to celebrate my birthday," Patricia began, her voice carrying the practiced warmth of 1,000 charity galas. 60 years, can you believe it? Polite laughter. Someone called out, "You don't look a day over 50, Patricia." She smiled, accepting the flattery like royalty receiving tribute. Then her expression shifted. "But tonight, I also want to discuss family, about what it means to support each other through difficult times." My stomach tightened. Patricia turned to look directly at me. "My youngest daughter has been blessed with a successful little farm, a simple life, but apparently a profitable one." Little farm, simple life, the words dripped with condescension. "And right now," she continued, "our family needs her help." A waiter appeared from nowhere holding a leather folder. He walked directly to my seat and placed it in front of me. I didn't touch it. "All she needs to do is sign," Patricia said, her voice amplified by the silent room. "Just a small piece of land to help her mother keep her home." 40 pairs of eyes turned toward me. I could feel their judgment, their expectations, their curiosity about what the family disappointment would do. Trevor stood up, smoothing his expensive jacket. "It's a fair market price. The paperwork's all in order. Your husband's land isn't worth much anyway. Your husband's land. Not our land, not our home where we raised our children. Go on, Sarah." Patricia's smile didn't reach her eyes. "You won't let your mother become homeless, will you? You know what family means." The trap had been set perfectly. Now it was time to spring it. The whispers started immediately. Poor Patricia. A woman to my left, loud enough to be heard. "Imagine having to beg your own daughter. Can you believe she'd even hesitate?" Another voice from behind me. Amanda leaned forward, her face flushed. "Sarah has always been the selfish one. She abandoned us to play farmer's wife while we handled everything here." I felt James's hand find mine under the table. Steady, warm, Trevor circled closer, sensing victory. "Let's be honest here. Your husband got lucky with some dirt. The least you can do is share the wealth. That's what family does. The least we can do," I repeated quietly. "That's right. He was enjoying this now, playing to the audience. I mean, what has he ever contributed? He plants vegetables. My grandmother could do that." A few uncomfortable laughs. My father sat frozen in his chair, staring at the tablecloth like he wished he could disappear into it. He'd always been skilled at that, vanishing when Patricia needed someone to stand up to her. Patricia pressed her advantage. "So, Sarah, will you sign?" She gestured at the leather folder. "Or will you prove to everyone here that you never really cared about this family?" The room held its breath. 40 people waiting for me to fold, to be the obedient daughter, to sacrifice what James and I had built so they could maintain their illusions a little longer. 5 seconds of silence stretched into 10. Then I stood up, but I didn't reach for the pen. Before I answer, I said, my voice calm and clear, "I have a question for Trevor." His smile faltered slightly. What kind of question? A simple one. I looked directly at him. "Can you explain to everyone here exactly how you lost all your money?" Trevor's face went rigid. "That's not really relevant to, not relevant." I kept my voice level. No anger, no trembling, just facts. "You're asking me to give away $3 million. I think everyone here deserves to know where the original money went." Patricia stepped forward. "Sarah, this isn't the time." "When is the time, Mom?" I turned to her. "After I've already signed, when it's too late to ask questions." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I saw Grandma Ruth lean forward in her seat, her eyes sharp. "Trevor," I continued, facing him again, "you were fired from your hedge fund 6 months ago, weren't you?" His jaw tightened. "I left voluntarily. That's not what the financial press reported. Internal review, termination. I let the words hang, but that's not the worst part, is it?" Amanda's hand flew to her throat. "Sarah, stop. You didn't just lose your job. You took Mom's retirement savings, the money she'd set aside for decades, and you invested it yourself, didn't you?" Patricia's champagne flute trembled in her hand. He was trying to help. Was he? I pulled out my phone. Or was he gambling with your future? The room had gone completely silent now. Even the jazz quartet had stopped playing, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Trevor took a step toward me, his voice dropping to something dangerous. You don't know what you're talking about. Actually, I do. I've spent the last 3 days learning exactly what happened to your fortune, Trevor, and it's quite a story. He went pale. Would you like to tell them, or should I? Amanda started crying. Patricia gripped the back of her chair, but Trevor said nothing, so I continued. I opened the email on my phone. Trevor made what traders call a short position. I explained, keeping my voice steady. That means he bet against a company. Bet that its stock would crash. If it did, he'd make millions. This is ridiculous. Trevor spat. You don't understand finance. I worked on Wall Street for 4 years. I reminded him. I understand it perfectly fine. I held up my phone and read aloud. My brother-in-law's little farm project is about to collapse. Got reliable intel from an inside source. Their technology doesn't scale. I'm going all in on the short. Going to make a fortune off his failure. Gasps scattered through the room. The look on Sarah's face when they go bankrupt will be worth more than the money. Dead silence. I lowered the phone. Trevor didn't just make a bad investment. He specifically targeted my husband's company. He bet everything, including Mom's retirement, on James failing. Patricia's face had gone chalk white. Trevor, is this true? He couldn't meet her eyes. I had good information. It should have worked. He wanted us to fail. I said. He wanted to profit from destroying us, not because it was smart business, because he resented that I chose James over someone like him. Amanda's sobs grew louder. Several guests were already gathering their things, looking for exits, and the company. Trevor's voice cracked. What happened? What do you mean, what happened? It didn't fail, Trevor. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost, it grew 340% in the past year. His legs seemed to buckle slightly. You lost everything betting against a company worth $47 million. Now the murmurs became something else. Shock, confusion, 47 million. Someone whispered, the farmer's company. It was time. An older man near the front, one of Trevor's former colleagues, raised his hand like we were in a boardroom. Wait, what company are we talking about here? I opened the Forbes article on my phone and handed it to the woman nearest me. Pass this around. The phone moved from hand to hand. I watched faces change as they read. Confusion giving way to disbelief, giving way to something like awe. The MIT PhD who left academia to revolutionize sustainable farming. Someone read aloud, TerraWise Technologies, valued at $47 million, founder James Chen. The name landed like a detonation. Trevor shoved through the crowd to grab the phone. His hands were shaking as he stared at the screen, at the photo of James in his navy sweater standing in front of his greenhouse. His voice had gone hoarse. He's just a farmer. He plants vegetables. James had been silent this entire time, sitting calmly beside me. Now he stood and somehow the room felt smaller. I am a farmer, he said, his voice quiet but clear. I'm also an engineer. I have a doctorate from MIT. He paused. The two aren't mutually exclusive. You could have heard a pin drop. Patricia's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. Nobody moved to clean it up. From the corner, Grandma Ruth's voice rang out, thin but triumphant. I always said he was the smartest one in this room. She was smiling now, her eyes bright. Nobody listened. The room erupted. Whispers, exclamations, guests pulling out their own phones to verify what they'd just heard. And Trevor just stood there, the Forbes article glowing on the screen in front of him, watching his entire narrative collapse. $47 million. The glorified laborer was worth $47 million. The chaos settled slowly. Guests found their seats again. but the energy had shifted completely. They weren't looking at me with pity anymore. They were looking at Patricia. My mother stood frozen, broken glass at her feet, mascara beginning to smear at the corners of her eyes. Sarah. Her voice was small now, nothing like the commanding tone from minutes ago. Please, we're still family. Whatever Trevor did, Mom. I kept my voice gentle but firm. I'm not signing anything, but you have the money. You could, yes, I could. I picked up the leather folder she'd so carefully prepared and set it aside, untouched. But this land isn't mine to sell. It's James's legacy for our children, our home, and I don't have the right to give that away. Amanda lifted her tear-streaked face. So you're just going to let Mom lose everything? You spent 7 years telling me I made a mistake. I said, addressing the whole room now. You excluded me from holidays. You told my nieces that I chose poverty. You cut me out of family photos because James wouldn't fit the aesthetic. Patricia flinched. And now you're asking me to sell our land, our children's inheritance, to cover losses from a bet made against us. I let that sink in. Think about that. We didn't know. Patricia whispered. I didn't know what Trevor was doing. Maybe not the details, but you gave him your retirement money without asking questions because you believed in him, in the image he projected. I paused. You never believed in us. The words landed hard. I saw my mother sway slightly. Having money doesn't mean I owe it to people who spent 7 years hoping I'd fail. Nobody spoke. The leather folder sat on the table between us, unsigned. James placed his hand on my shoulder and stood. The room went still again. Mrs. Whitmore. His voice carried effortlessly, calm and measured. I never needed your approval. I stopped expecting it a long time ago. Patricia couldn't meet his eyes. But I also never wished you harm. Sarah loves you, even when you've made it difficult. He let that settle, so I want to make something clear. He took a step forward. I won't sell our land. That's not negotiable. But I'm willing to help you keep your house. Patricia's head snapped up. What? A personal loan. Enough to cover the immediate mortgage payments and give you time to sort out the rest. He paused. Not 3 million. But enough. Hope flickered across Patricia's face. Desperate, grasping hope. But there are conditions. Trevor, who had been skulking near the wall, stiffened. 1. Trevor repays every cent with interest over 5 years. Documented, legally binding. James's gaze shifted to my brother-in-law. 2. He gets professional help for the gambling problem. Verified attendance. 3. You never ask us for money again. Ever. I'm not taking charity from him. Trevor snarled. James didn't blink. Then don't. But that's the only offer you'll get from us. Amanda grabbed Trevor's arm. Trevor, please. This is humiliating. Trevor shook her off. You expect me to take a handout from the guy He stopped himself. But everyone heard what he didn't say. The guy I tried to destroy. This isn't revenge, James said quietly. This is a boundary. Learn the difference. Patricia looked between her son-in-law and her youngest daughter's husband. The choice was written on her face. Pride versus survival. She didn't answer, but Trevor was already grabbing his jacket, storming toward the exit. This isn't over. He spat. Nobody stopped him from leaving. That moment when James laid out those conditions, I saw my mother's face change. She finally understood something she'd missed for 7 years. We weren't the ones who needed them. They needed us. The restaurant door slammed behind Trevor. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Amanda let out a broken sob and ran after him, her heels clicking against the marble floor. The spell shattered. Guests began reaching for their coats, making excuses. Lovely party, Patricia. We should do this again sometime. So sorry about everything. They couldn't get out fast enough. Within 10 minutes, the room that had held 40 people was nearly empty. Just the family remained, my mother, my father, Grandma Ruth, James and me, and broken glass still glittering on the floor. Patricia lowered herself into a chair. She looked older suddenly, the careful facade cracked beyond repair. Her 60th birthday party had become the night her entire social image collapsed. My father moved first. "I'm sorry, Sarah." I turned to him. Richard Whitmore had his hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched like a man finally facing something he'd spent decades avoiding. "I should have said something years ago. When your mother first..." He struggled for words. "I was a coward. I let her run everything. I let her push you away, and I'm sorry." The apology hung in the air. "It's a little late, Dad, I know." His voice cracked, but I'm saying it anyway, for what it's worth. Something in my chest loosened. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something adjacent to it. Grandma Ruth rose from her corner table and walked over to embrace me. Her arms were thin but surprisingly strong. "I'm proud of you," she whispered against my hair. "Your grandfather would be too." I held her tight. Behind us, Patricia remained in her chair, staring at the unsigned contract on the table. She hadn't said a word since Trevor left. I wondered if she ever would. A week later, the updates started trickling in. Amanda called first, not to apologize, but to tell me she and Trevor were separating. She discovered credit card statements he'd hidden, debts she'd never known existed. "I don't know who I married," she said, her voice hollow. "I thought I knew. I didn't say I told you so. There was no satisfaction in it. Patricia sold the Connecticut house, not because she had to. James's loan offer still stood, conditions and all, but because she couldn't face the neighbors." Word had spread. By the morning after the party, her phone had stopped ringing. She moved to a smaller condo in Hartford. Clean, practical, nothing like the showpiece she'd spent 40 years curating. She didn't call me, no apology, no acknowledgement of what had happened. But no accusations either, just silence. My father, though, Richard, surprised me. He called every Sunday. Short conversations at first, awkward and halting. "How are the kids? How's the farm? Weather treating you well?" But he kept calling, week after week. For the first time in 7 years, my father was trying. Grandma Ruth did more than try. She bought a train ticket and showed up on our porch 2 weeks after the party, a suitcase in one hand and a tin of homemade cookies in the other. "I'm staying a month," she announced. "I want to know my grandchildren properly." Emma and Daniel adored her. She taught them to play cards, told them stories about the farm their great-grandfather had owned, let them help her bake. I watched them together one afternoon, Ruth laughing as Daniel tried to crack an egg, shells everywhere, and felt something I hadn't expected. Not victory, relief. There's a difference, a small one but important. I was sitting on the porch when it finally hit me. Late September. The leaves were just starting to turn, and James was out in the field with the kids, teaching Emma how to check soil moisture. Their laughter carried across the farm like music. 7 years ago I'd been terrified, not of leaving my job, not of starting over, but of losing my family. I'd spent so many nights lying awake, wondering if they were right. If I was throwing everything away for a man they'd never respect. I'd been waiting for them to see me, to really see me, not the Ivy League graduate, not the Wall Street analyst, not the daughter they wanted me to be. Just me, Sarah,